The story begins at a high school, where Saito Hojo is walking toward his classroom. As he reaches the door, he's confronted by Akane, a fellow student, who delivers a chilling warning: "Keep our relationship a secret, or I'll erase you from existence." Saito is left in a state of confusion, trying to understand what just happened. He reflects on the odd situation he's now caught in, being linked to Akane, someone he despises the most at school. The story then takes us back a few days earlier, where Akane is furious with Saito for filling out the class with irrelevant comments and failing to provide proper feedback. She's especially upset that he didn't follow the timetable or take responsibility for simple tasks like cleaning the blackboard. Saito defends himself, saying the day was uneventful and there was nothing important to note. When Akane points out his strange comment about evil spirits in the absence column, Saito dismisses it, claiming no one would care. However, Akane is not satisfied and insists she's the one who read it. Saito sarcastically suggests she should spend her time reading books instead, but Akane retorts that she's trying to improve his attitude. The tension escalates until Himari steps in, urging Akane to ease up on Saito before she pushes him too far. Akane, still upset, accuses him of neglecting his duties and being careless. Saito defends himself, but Akane seems to have a personal dislike for him. Himari asks Akane why she's always picking on Saito, to which Akane confesses that his presence annoys her for reasons she can't quite explain. Saito sarcastically wonders if he's mentally unbearable to her, but Akane doesn't disagree. Just then, Shiori steps in, teasing Saito and calling him a poor thing while patting his head. Saito, relieved by her support, thanks her for being understanding. Himari, noticing Akane constantly bothering Saito, teasingly asks, "Are you sure you're not secretly into him?" Akane immediately rejects the idea, snapping, "Not a chance. Even if he were the only guy left, I wouldn't feel that way." Saito smirks and quickly shoots back, "Same here. Even if everything changed, I'd never fall for you." Their witty back and forth adds humor and sharpness to their dynamic, revealing the playful tension between them. After school, Saito is walking when his grandfather calls, asking if he's free for a quick chat and offering to meet for a cup of tea. Saito, however, declines, joking that he prefers spending time with his book rather than hanging out with old geezers. His grandfather insists, saying he's planning to pass on his business to Saito one day, so he'd better indulge him for a moment or risk regret later. Saito sarcastically replies, but his grandfather acts hurt, teasing him about being cold-hearted. Saito counters that he thought his grandfather would be tougher. His grandfather, with a sly tone, reminds Saito that he can't refuse him, playing on his grandson's intelligence. While Saito, still teasing, asks, "What would happen if I decided to run away?" His grandfather warns him to obey for his own good, and Saito jokingly compares his grandfather to a villain blackmailing him. The conversation ends with the grandfather firmly telling Saito to get in the car. Saito sits in the back, wondering where he's being taken. The driver explains that they've been instructed to inform him once they arrive and apologizes for the president's behavior. Saito, with a hint of indifference, replies that he's used to it. As the ride continues, Saito reflects on his grandfather Tenryu Hojo, who once saved the family business from financial collapse. Despite public backlash, his grandfather made bold decisions, firing ineffective leaders, and turned Hojo Group into a successful global tech company. Even in his later years, Tenryu remains influential. The driver then comments that, unlike Saito's father, the president seems to have a special fondness for him, giving a subtle glimpse into the family dynamics. Saito arrives at his destination and is waiting for his grandfather when unexpectedly, Akane shows up. She asks why he's there, and Saito casually explains that his grandfather summoned him. Akane shares that her grandmother called her there, but she's annoyed that Saito's presence has ruined her plan for a peaceful lunch. Saito, uninterested in her complaints, tells her not to speak to him while he reads, which only frustrates Akane more. She demands an apology, saying she'll keep bothering him until he gives one. Saito sarcastically asks if she'll follow him around, and Akane proudly confirms she will. Just then, both of their grandparents arrive together in a red Ferrari, surprising both of them. Saito's grandfather casually greets them, while Akane's grandmother jokes about how impatient young people are. Saito and Akane are left confused as both grandparents tell them to come along. They're further stunned when they realize their grandparents are referring to them both and wonder what's going on. Saito and Akane find themselves seated for a luxurious meal where Saito's grandfather offers a toast, calling the day special. Confused by his choice of words, Saito remains silent, while Akane, already annoyed, asks for more juice. Saito points out her excessive juice consumption, and Akane snarkily claims she lost her appetite after seeing him. Saito asks if she's sure she don't have pheromones that suppress people's appetite. She responds, "Too bad, it's a real feast. Wish he would disintegrate down to a nucleus." He responds, "You should do the same on a quantum level instead." Their grandparents enjoy the banter, remarking how they remind them of their younger selves, but both Saito and Akane deny it. Things take a surprising turn when Saito inquires about the reason for the meeting. Suddenly, Saito's grandfather announces that they want Saito and Akane to get married, leaving them both stunned. Saito wonders if it's some kind of joke or hidden message, but his grandfather urges him not to overthink it. Akane, confused, protests, questioning why they'd be asked to marry while still in school. The grandmother suggests that marriage can happen at 18, and the grandfather insists again that they should marry. The grandparents then share their past experiences, revealing they had feelings for each other when they were young, but never ended up together. Saito's grandfather married someone else, had a happy life, and lost his wife 10 years ago. Akane's grandmother reveals her own husband passed away, and Tenryu, Saito's grandfather, has supported her since. Akane, uncomfortable with the personal details, tries to steer the conversation elsewhere, but the grandparents continue, saying they want their grandchildren to fulfill the dreams they couldn't. Saito asks Akane if she will marry for her sake, but Akane firmly refuses, insisting that marriage is about love and choice, not obligation. Saito jokingly comments on Akane's idealism, but Akane remains firm in her beliefs. Saito also makes it clear he has no interest in the arrangement, asserting that forced marriages aren't something that can happen in their country. Saito's grandfather, anticipating their rejection, comments that it's expected and that they resemble the younger versions of them. The mood lightens when a stray dog is brought into the conversation. Grandpa jokingly threatens that if Saito doesn't agree to the marriage, the dog will inherit the company. Saito, perplexed, asks about the dog, and Grandpa casually explains he picked it up from the street. He humorously adds that while the dog may not be fit to lead the company, it could at least help with paperwork by stamping documents with its paw. Saito, unimpressed, sarcastically remarks that the dog isn't the real problem. Grandpa responds by acknowledging that perhaps Hojo Group's legacy will end with his generation, before playfully asserting that a little bit of madness is necessary to run a company. Meanwhile, Akane's grandmother calls her over to whisper something, which leaves Akane shocked. Grandpa then turns to both of them, advising that they take time to reflect and not act impulsively. He gives them 3 days to decide, urging them to think about what's truly in their best interest. After the grandparents leave, Akane asks Saito if he's seriously considering the marriage proposal, looking for his reaction. Saito turns the question back on her, asking what her thoughts are. Akane, frustrated by the situation, tries to brush him off, saying she never imagined this would happen. Saito presses further, curious about what her grandmother told her, but Akane refuses to share, insisting it's not relevant. Saito, determined to understand the full picture, says it's important to know what both sides are thinking, but Akane stubbornly shuts him down, telling him not to try and figure her out. Realizing he won't get through to her, Saito steps back, allowing Akane to take the lead. Akane asserts that she will handle things her own way as it's her future. Later, Akane calls her friend Himari and poses a hypothetical question. If she were forced to marry someone she didn't like due to family obligations, what would she do? Himari jokes that the situation feels old-fashioned, but says she would simply reject the idea. Akane presses her, asking why, and Himari reveals she has a crush on someone else and only wants to marry him. Akane is surprised and asks who it is, but Himari refuses to tell. In turn, Himari teases Akane, asking if she has a crush on anyone. Akane shares that she has someone in mind, but in a dark, frustrated tone, says that she wishes he were gone and that her problems would be solved if he just disappeared. Himari lightens the mood by joking that Akane could marry the person to cut down on living expenses. But Akane dismisses this idea as not a good reason to get married. She then reflects on the expectation of marriage leading to children, to which Himari jokingly suggests Akane could have a large family. Akane laughs it off, and the conversation continues with playful teasing between the two, ending in laughter over their hypothetical scenarios. Then we see Saito, deep in thought, troubled by the idea of being forced into a situation involving Akane, someone he's already stressed about dealing with both at school and at home. He's reflecting on his grandfather's unreasonable demands. His grandfather has told him that to inherit the family business, Saito's life will be completely controlled. If he refuses, the company will be passed to a random outsider. Shiori, noticing Saito's inner conflict, asks what he truly desires: the freedom to live his life as he wishes, or the company's legacy. Saito expresses that ideally, he wants both. Shiori reminds him that life doesn't work that way. Everyone must follow certain rules or instincts, and the best way to thrive is to work within those rules instead of resisting them. Saito, still uncertain, wonders if that means he must comply and inherit the company. Shiori reassures him that while he may use the company to achieve his goals, no matter what path Saito chooses, Shiori will support him, whether he ends up struggling or succeeding. Shiori promises to be by his side always. At school, Saito tries to greet Akane, but she brushes him off. A few days later, both are called in front of Saito's grandfather, who asks if they've made a decision. The two reluctantly agree to go through with the marriage, though Akane insists it's not out of affection. The grandparents are happy with their decision and have already made arrangements. To Saito's surprise, his grandfather announces that they will marry immediately and have prepared a new home for them. Saito protests, but the grandparents assure them everything is already in place. After they leave, Saito locks the door of the house, and Akane, feeling uneasy, asks if he's trying to trap her. Saito explains that the door can be opened from the inside, but Akane is still suspicious of the situation. After moving into their new luxurious house, Akane is initially impressed, though she continues to express frustration over the situation, particularly with having to live with Saito. The two explore the house, and Saito finds solace in his personal study. However, when they reach the bedroom, Akane is shocked to find only one bed, which causes a bit of tension. Saito contacts his grandfather, who insists that since they are married, they must sleep in the same bed, leaving no alternative options like the sofa. As the conversation takes a strange turn, Akane accuses Saito of having inappropriate intentions and assumes that their grandfather expects them to engage in intimate relations. Saito tries to calm her down, assuring her that he isn't interested in forcing anything and doesn't intend to take advantage of her. Akane, still upset, storms off to her room. Akane and Saito are adjusting to an unexpected marriage arranged by their families while moving into their new shared home. Akane is initially resistant to Saito's help, accusing him of having ulterior motives. Later, when they eat together, Akane remains skeptical, especially about the oddities of the arrangement. As they share a bed, both characters are uncomfortable and set boundaries with each other, acknowledging the awkwardness of the situation. Akane explains that her marriage to Saito is only a formality tied to her personal goals. Throughout the scenario, there's humor and tension between the characters, marked by playful arguments and misunderstandings. They both agree to keep their marriage a secret from others, showcasing their reluctance and conflict about the situation. Episode 2 starts off with Akane firmly instructing Saito to keep their marriage a secret and not to mention it to anyone. As they enter the classroom, Himari greets them and curiously asks what they were discussing. Akane quickly dismisses the question, saying it was nothing important. Sensing some tension, Himari playfully teases Akane, suggesting she might be upset with Saito. Akane clarifies that she was simply telling him to stop addressing her so informally. Meanwhile, Saito reflects that Akane was the one who started the conversation in the first place. Elsewhere, Shisei approaches Saito and sniffs him, noticing a different scent from his shampoo. She questions where he spent the night, but Sato explains that his father bought a new, unusual shampoo. Shisei, unconvinced, points out that he also smells like a girl and teasingly bites his neck. She then speculates that Sato must have gotten married, catching him off guard. Shisei admits she has been looking into their grandfather's company and uncovered suspicious behavior. She even knows the location of Sato's new home and deduces that his wife's name is Sakamori. Alarmed, Sato drags her out of the classroom to stop the conversation, but Shisei refuses to stay silent unless he offers her a bribe, leaving Sato in a difficult position. After physical education, Sato, feeling groggy and overwhelmed, leans against the wall. Akane approaches, irritated, and scolds him for leaving sports equipment outside. He explains that the next class needs it, and he already confirmed it with the teacher. Himari, overhearing, mentions that she and Akane had put the equipment away earlier, making their efforts unnecessary. Akane dramatically jokes about a worst-case scenario, saying that if a meteor struck and people had to evacuate, she would blame Sato for any tripping hazards. Meanwhile, their classmates whisper about how often Sato and Akane bicker, seeing them as a couple that's always together. Shio, puzzled, asks for clarification, and Himari explains that their constant squabbling has made them known as a married comedy duo. Akane denies it, while Sato quietly wonders if the description holds some truth. At home, Akane opens the fridge, only to find it stuffed with cans of concentrated vegetable juice. Sato proudly explains that he bought them for their health benefits, but Akane argues that they don't provide a balanced diet. Sato then unveils his stash of cup noodles, claiming they are the perfect meal. Affordable, quick, and delicious. Akane, concerned, asks about his protein intake, and Sato enthusiastically shares his routine of drinking protein shakes, mixing whey and casein, and adding vegetable juice for extra nutrients. He offers her a glass, but she refuses, questioning if he seriously intends to survive on such a diet. Sato insists this is his version of simple cooking, but Akane argues it doesn't qualify as cooking at all. Frustrated, Sato shoves his protein shake toward her, calling it his masterpiece. But Akane recoils in disgust. Determined to fix his eating habits, she decides to teach him the value of real meals. Confident in her skills, she orders Sato to sit while she prepares something, secretly amused at the thought of him being forced to acknowledge her cooking talent. Noticing her smirk, Sato grows suspicious, wondering if she's planning something devious. When Akane finally presents her dishes, Sato hesitates and jokes about whether they contain anything dangerous. She reassures him that it's just normal food and urges him to try it. As he takes a bite, memories of his childhood surface. Days when he survived on simple meals like cup noodles after his parents left him. Akane eagerly asks for his opinion, and Sato, though reluctant, admits it tastes like an ordinary homemade meal, but feels more meaningful than expected. Frustrated by his lukewarm reaction, Akane threatens to feed it to stray dogs, but Sato insists he never said it was bad. When she tries to snatch the plate back, he refuses, finishing the meal. Annoyed, Akane jokingly curses him for eating all her food, while Sato reflects that, despite her complaints, it was one of the most satisfying meals he's had in a long time. The next morning, Akane tries to wake Sato, who is still half asleep and dreaming. In his dazed state, he murmurs about wanting to sleep longer and unintentionally pulls her back into bed. Flustered, Akane immediately smacks him awake. Sato, startled, apologizes, saying he didn't expect her to wake him so aggressively. Akane quickly clarifies that she didn't do it out of kindness but to scold him. Confused, Sato asks why, and she points to the sink full of dirty dishes. She reminds him that since she cooked last night, it's his turn to clean. Sato lazily suggests leaving them for later and just using other plates in the meantime. Akane, exasperated, demands that he wash them immediately. Her frustration grows when she discovers toilet paper rolls and soap wrappers scattered in the bathroom. She accuses Sato of being messy, irritated by his dismissive attitude. On the way to school, Sato reflects on how vastly different their perspectives are, wondering if they will ever see eye to eye. That evening, he tries to unwind with a video game, but Akane, trying to study, becomes annoyed by the noise. She asks about the game, and Sato explains that it's a zombie survival game where players use local specialties as weapons. Disgusted, Akane tells him to turn it off. Sato defends himself, saying he even toned down the violence settings, but Akane argues that violent games encourage violent behavior. Sato counters, asking her not to judge people based on their hobbies. Their argument escalates until the doorbell rings, momentarily distracting them. Later, Sato prepares for a relaxing bath, only to find Akane asleep in the tub. Worried she might drown, he tries to wake her, but she mumbles in her sleep, teasing him about surrendering and joking that she might let him stay in the doghouse. Sato considers leaving her, but realizing the potential danger, he pulls her out, only to trip and end up in an awkward position with her on top. Akane wakes up, immediately accusing him of harassment and calling him a pervert. Sato tries to explain, but Akane furiously kicks him out, insisting he never enter the bathroom again. Later that night, she contemplates whether Sato was actually trying to help, but quickly brushes off the thought. At school, Himari notices Akane looking frustrated and asks if it's because of Sato. Akane denies it, but admits she's reaching her limit with all their arguments. Himari advises her to talk things out, but Akane doubts it will work. Meanwhile, Sato confides in his cousin Scherer, who suggests that if things are too difficult, he should either make an effort to get along or consider divorce. Sato, determined not to give up his inheritance, refuses. Scherer playfully suggests that Sato sweep Akane off her feet. Literally. That evening, Akane unexpectedly asks to talk. Sato assumes it's about divorce, but she clarifies that she wants to find a way to make their marriage more bearable. Though she still dislikes him, she admits they should at least try to live together without constant conflict. They agree to set household rules, including Sato doing the dishes more frequently. When he jokingly asks for patience when they accidentally bump into each other in bed, Akane misunderstands and sets a strict physical boundary. Later, Sato surprises Akane with her favorite dessert, remembering it from an old essay she wrote. She's taken aback but thanks him. That night, she cooks for him again, and he genuinely compliments her food, catching them both off guard. As they set new boundaries, Sato finds himself noticing Akane's smile for the first time, realizing it's quite charming despite her usual scowls. Episode 3 starts off with Sato engrossed in a book when Akane interrupts him, suggesting they watch a movie together. Initially, Sato is hesitant, wanting to focus on his reading, but Akane's enthusiasm convinces him to join. She reveals that the movie she rented is an extensive 24-hour-long film, but offers a more manageable option, a 3-hour condensed version that highlights the best scenes. Sato, relieved, agrees to watch the shorter version. As the film plays, Akane is thoroughly enjoying it, while Sato, uninterested, eventually dozes off. When he wakes up groggy and disoriented, he jokingly wonders if they've somehow ended up on Alpha Centauri, only for Akane to playfully assure him that they are still on Earth. In a lighthearted moment, Akane thanks Sato for watching the movie with her, and as a token of appreciation, offers him the choice of what they watch next time. Sato expresses his preference for video games over movies, but Akane is skeptical, claiming she wouldn't enjoy them. Despite her reluctance, Sato encourages her to try and offers to teach her. To his surprise, Akane becomes completely engrossed in the game. Sato, amused by this unexpected turn of events, reflects on how he is now having fun with someone he initially saw as an adversary. Later that night, after their gaming session, Akane thanks Sato for introducing her to the game. When Sato casually shortens her name, Akane playfully insists he use her full name instead. After some teasing, Sato agrees and starts calling her by her actual name, which she appreciates. The scene ends with a moment of quiet tension where Sato almost says something but decides against it. The next day at school, Akane notices that Sato has dropped an eraser and hands it back to him. The interaction is brief, but soon after, Himari asks Akane if she and Sato had a fight. Akane quickly dismisses the idea, saying they always argue. However, Himari points out that today's exchange felt different. They weren't bickering as usual, but instead seemed distant. Akane denies any change, but when Himari remarks that she has never called Sato by his first name before, Akane gets flustered and hastily makes an excuse to leave. Himari, puzzled by her reaction, watches her go with curiosity. The scene shifts to the library, where Sato is deeply focused on his reading when his playful younger sister, Shisei, surprises him by covering his eyes with her damp hands and challenging him to guess who it is. Recognizing her antics instantly, Sato responds with sarcasm. Shisei teases him affectionately, and Sato, slightly puzzled, asks why she did that. Shisei jokingly claims she was helping him with his dry eyes. Noticing the book Sato is reading, she expresses surprise at his interest in improving communication skills. Sato reveals that he's trying to improve his relationship with Akane, which piques her curiosity. She asks if the book has been helpful, and Sato responds that it emphasizes teamwork as a key to building strong bonds. Later, Sato approaches Akane and asks if she has a moment to talk. Akane, startled, insists she doesn't like talking much at school. Undeterred, Sato asks if she has any plans after school. When she replies that she needs to study, he presses further, asking if she has plans with friends. When she says no, he suggests they go shopping together. Akane, surprised, wonders if Sato is asking her on a date. In response, Sato suddenly pulls her into a nearby room. Flustered, Akane accuses him of being a pervert, but Sato quickly clarifies that it's not a date, just a simple errand. He explains that he was offering to help her carry groceries home. Realizing the mix-up, Akane sarcastically agrees that it's all about the groceries, insisting that Sato would never ask her out. Sato laughs it off, assuring her there was no such intention. As Akane is about to leave, Himari excitedly interrupts, inviting her to hang out since her work got cancelled. She suggests going to a parfait place that Akane loves, where a special strawberry parfait is being offered. Himari even offers to treat her, but Akane turns her down, explaining that she already has other plans. Himari, curious, assumes it's with a new friend and wants to meet them. When Akane mentions it's someone she knows, Himari guesses it's Sato. Akane quickly denies that it's a date. Himari, not giving up, suggests they all go together, but Akane apologizes and rushes off. While hurrying down the stairs, Akane accidentally steps on Shisei, who was lying in wait. After apologizing, Akane asks what she was doing on the ground, and Shisei jokingly calls it a trap. Shisei then playfully claims that Akane has earned a legendary sword for stepping on her, adding humor to the moment. Akane tries to hurry away, but Shisei stops her to ask a quirky question about teamwork, specifically about Sato. Akane brushes it off, but Shisei insists she can't leave without answering. Finally, Akane apologizes again and makes her escape. Akane arrives at the meeting spot, mentally reassuring herself that this is just a simple errand. Definitely not a date. Sato soon arrives, catching her off guard. The two head to the store, with Akane suggesting a local one near her home. While shopping, Sato helps by recalling the items they need, but Akane, focused on staying within budget, insists they compare prices carefully. She emphasizes that affordability is key, especially when it comes to eggs, and guides him to avoid the pricier options. As they continue shopping, Akane spots a limited-time sale and excitedly hands her bag to Sato before rushing toward the sale area. However, in the rush, she gets pushed aside and misses out. Sato tries to step in, but faces the same problem. They both laugh at their misfortune, and Akane determines to keep trying, promising that next time they'll succeed. Despite some reluctance, Sato agrees to continue the search with her. As they walk home, Sato comments on Akane's strong work ethic. Akane, slightly defensive, jokingly asks if he's implying that she's cheap. Sato quickly clarifies, saying he simply thinks she'd make a great wife one day. Akane, never missing an opportunity to tease, reminds Sato that she's already his wife, referencing their unique bond. Sato, slightly embarrassed, admits he had forgotten. Later that night, Akane wakes up to find Sato looking at her and accuses him of trying to attack her. Sato defends himself, claiming she was the one who suddenly hugged him. Akane denies it, and Sato explains that he was just lying still to avoid waking her. Akane, still suspicious, insists she saw him trying something, but Sato laughs it off. He then admits that he was simply admiring how cute she looked while sleeping and couldn't resist poking her cheek. When Akane asks how cute she really was, Sato exaggerates, saying she was so adorable he almost lost control. Akane blushes and playfully brushes off his comment, saying if it was only a little bit, he can watch her while she sleeps. The next morning, as they greet each other, Sato hears a scream and rushes over, Akane explains that she accidentally burned her toast, and Sato jokes that it's not just burnt, it's on fire. He teases her about acting strangely that day. Akane, noticing that Sato isn't properly dressed, asks him what's going on, and he quickly denies anything strange. As they share a parfait later, Himari spots them and is surprised to see them together outside of school. She jokingly asks if they're walking home together, but Akane quickly dismisses it, playfully accusing Sato of stalking her. Himari notices they're sharing the parfait and remarks on how they seem to be enjoying themselves. Akane explains that Sato simply ate a piece she had discarded. Sato defends himself, claiming he's not a stray dog, while Akane teases that it's just his habit. Later that night, Akane is up studying for an upcoming quiz. When Sato asks why she's still at it so late, she points out that he didn't study last time and still aced the test. Feeling frustrated, she wonders if he's mocking her hard work, but Sato reassures her that's not his intention. That night, when she falls asleep with a fever, Sato carries her to the hospital. Reflecting on how their relationship has changed, Akane reminds Sato that he's married, leaving him to reflect on how cute his wife truly is. Episode 4 begins with Akane stopping Sato, warning that she'll shoot if he doesn't halt. However, instead of pulling out a weapon, she hands him a lunchbox, catching him off guard. Sato admits he completely forgot it, and Akane playfully teases him, joking that he must not have wanted to eat her homemade meal. He reassures her that he enjoys her cooking, and she firmly warns him not to leave any leftovers. During lunchtime, Sato and Akane open their meals, preparing to eat, when Sato's younger sister, Shisei, suddenly interrupts, demanding his entire lunch. She dramatically claims she's starving, insisting that older brothers should always feed their younger sisters, even though she had a huge breakfast. Sato protests, but his classmates quickly gang up on him, teasing him for being stingy. Under pressure, Sato reluctantly agrees to give her just one bite. However, the situation escalates when Himari notices that Sato's lunch looks exactly like Akane's. The classmates begin teasing him, suggesting that Akane made it for him. Himari playfully jokes about them being a couple, and the class starts speculating. Akane fiercely denies it, her face turning crimson. Sato quickly dismisses the idea, confirming they aren't together, though both secretly think to themselves, "But we're actually married." The teasing continues, especially after the class notices how similar Sato and Akane's lunches are. Sato attempts to clarify, but before he can, Shisei, despite being allowed only a single bite, devours his entire meal. She cheekily claims she did it to eliminate the evidence for his sake, but it's obvious she was just hungry. Despite her antics, Sato affectionately pats her head, indulging her behavior. Later, while walking, Himari leaps down some stairs, fully confident that Sato will catch her if anything goes wrong. Not wanting to get involved, Sato sarcastically remarks that he would dodge instead. Himari teases him, saying that kind of attitude won't win him any girls, but Sato shrugs it off, claiming he doesn't need to worry about that. She then asks about his lunch, curious whether Akane actually made it for him or if it was just a coincidence. Sato firmly insists it was pure chance. Though not entirely convinced, Himari presses further about their relationship, but Sato stands his ground, denying any connection. She then assures him that she'll clear up the misunderstanding with the others, while Shisei watches from a distance, intrigued by their dynamic. In the next scene, Sato and Akane are sleeping when Akane suddenly hears a strange noise. Alarmed, she believes she sees something unsettling and lets out a scream. Sato, confused and groggy, asks what's wrong. Terrified, Akane insists there's a ghost, but Sato brushes it off, trying to go back to sleep. Too frightened to be alone, Akane pleads with him to do something. When Sato tells her to just sleep, Akane threatens to keep him up all night if he doesn't act. Begrudgingly, Sato asks what she expects him to do. Overcome with fear, Akane clings to Sato, refusing to let go. The following night, as Sato studies, Akane enters his room, explaining that she saw the ghost again and believes someone was moving around. Though she couldn't see them clearly, she's convinced it was something eerie. Sato suggests she take a picture next time, but Akane, getting emotional, insists the ghost might retaliate. As she prepares to leave, Sato reluctantly tells her to go back to her room. Later that evening, while studying together, Akane suddenly announces that she's going to take a bath. Sato gives his casual approval. But Akane, still nervous, hesitates and asks him to accompany her. Her persistence leaves Sato with no choice but to agree, though he firmly states it's just for that night. As Akane bathes, she periodically calls out to Sato, ensuring he's still there. Preoccupied, Sato doesn't immediately respond, making Akane more anxious. She abruptly opens the door to confront him, demanding to know why he ignored her. Caught off guard by her lack of a towel, Sato turns red, flustered, and asks why she isn't covered properly. The next day, Sato, visibly troubled, confides in his younger sister, Shisei, about the recent events. Noticing his frustration, Shisei teases him, joking that he seems fed up with married life. Seeking to comfort him, she reassures him that she's always there to help him escape his worries. Sato, confused, asks what she means. Shisei explains that everyone needs a person to lean on, and for him, that person is her. She encourages him to relax, but Sato insists she shouldn't act that way. The conversation shifts when Shisei asks about Akane, and Sato mentions that she's been hearing strange noises. Shisei, now serious, decides to investigate. Later, she approaches Akane and states, "I know you're married to my brother." Sato, overhearing, quickly denies it, but before Shisei can pry further, Sato and Akane drag her into an empty room. Once inside, Akane, clearly upset, scolds Sato for letting Shisei find out. Nervously, Sato insists that he didn't say a word. Shisei figured it out on her own. Studying them thoughtfully, Shisei simply nods, frustrating Sato. He demands she speak up, to which Shisei nonchalantly responds, "It's true, I figured it out myself. But more importantly, I've heard there's a ghost haunting your house." Akane quickly agrees, while Sato remains skeptical. Shisei then states, "I believe your house is haunted by an evil spirit." Akane, growing more anxious, pleads with her to do something. With confidence, Shisei reassures them, "Don't worry, I know exactly what to do." The next day, the three of them arrive at Sato's house. Shisei scans the surroundings and remarks, "This place feels like it's filled with bad energy." Hearing this, Sato and Akane grow even more uneasy. As they explore, Shisei insists on checking Sato's study, but he protests, saying it's just filled with books. Undeterred, Shisei persists. She jokingly suggests he might be hiding embarrassing magazines, causing Akane to defensively claim that nothing like that exists in their home. Sato clarifies that he only owns novels, not magazines. While inspecting the room, Shisei finds a pair of underwear, making Akane blush and demand an explanation. Moving on to Akane's study, Akane insists there's nothing supernatural there. However, Shisei teases her, saying, "You don't want me to find your underwear, do you?" Flustered, Akane pleads for her to stop joking and just focus on the ghost. After thorough investigation and listening to Akane's concerns, Shisei pauses before announcing, "I know who the ghost is. It's me." Sato and Akane are bewildered and demand an explanation. Shisei reveals that she had previously visited their home but hadn't mentioned it. Frustrated, Sato exclaims that she should have told them sooner. Shisei explains she got a key from their grandfather and decided to stop by as a gesture of gratitude. In return, she asks Akane to cook for her, which Akane happily agrees to. As the evening unfolds, Sato and Shisei grow closer while playing games, making Akane slightly uneasy. Noticing her discomfort, Sato asks if something's wrong, but Akane brushes it off. Later, when Sato prepares to shower, Shisei suddenly suggests they shower together. Shocked, Akane demands an explanation. Shisei casually explains that they used to bathe together as kids. Sato clarifies it was only occasionally, but Akane still protests. That night, as Sato rests, Akane enters his room, asking about Shisei's whereabouts. Sato explains she's staying up playing games. Akane uses this moment to confide in Sato, revealing her concerns. Their conversation turns lighthearted as they banter, but Akane eventually expresses unease about how much Sato spoils Shisei. Sato admits it's simply to keep her from crying like a child. Their conversation ends in an awkward but endearing moment. Episode 5 begins with a flashback that reveals a childhood memory from Akane's past. Himari, a playful and persistent friend, asks Akane if she has watched a romantic drama. Akane quickly dismisses the suggestion, claiming she's not interested. Himari, not easily deterred, suggests they watch it together, and even offers to become friends, but Akane insists she has no time for such things due to her home chores and studies. Himari then proposes they grab some food together, specifically mentioning a place that serves strawberry parfaits, despite Akane insisting she doesn't like them. Himari notices Akane's subtle interest and manages to convince her to join. Akane reluctantly agrees, and Himari excitedly calls it a date, leaving Akane confused by the playful suggestion. The scene shifts to a cafe, where Himari eagerly brings up the topic of Sato, asking Akane if she likes him. Akane is taken off guard, quickly denying it and questioning why Himari would even think that. Not backing down, Himari admits that she has feelings for Sato, which shocks Akane. She explains that she finds his calm, confident demeanor appealing, especially during a field day incident, when he stayed composed and helped a friend in distress, earning her admiration. Akane, however, is less impressed, suggesting Sato might just be self-centered. Himari insists that it's his dependability and strong sense of self that make him attractive. The conversation takes a more vulnerable turn when Himari opens up about her own insecurities, sharing how she admires Sato's ability to always remain sure of himself. She goes on to describe how, despite his distant nature, Sato has a surprisingly caring side, always noticing when she's feeling down and checking in on her. Akane, feeling a bit skeptical but intrigued, acknowledges that Himari seems to know a lot about Sato. Himari then asks Akane for help, hoping that, since she gets along with Sato, Akane could give her advice on how to make him like her back. Akane agrees to help, though she's unsure exactly what she's getting into. Himari eagerly expresses her gratitude, and Akane, still processing everything, realizes she doesn't know much about Sato herself. In a quiet moment at home, Sato is reading a book, while Akane, with a notebook and pen in hand, watches him intently. When Sato notices her staring, he teasingly asks what she's doing. Akane casually dismisses it, telling him to just continue with what he's doing. However, Sato finds her gaze distracting and comments on it. Later, while fiddling with his phone, Sato realizes Akane is still observing him in a playful manner. He jokes, claiming he's being stalked by his wife, and jokingly asks for help. During dinner, Akane starts recording a video of Sato. He immediately notices and jokingly asks if they need to have a discussion about image rights. Akane responds that since it's a personal video taken at home, no rules apply. When Sato asks why she's filming him, Akane teases him, saying she won't tell him. Sato laughs and sarcastically wonders why she would torture herself with such a task. The conversation shifts to Akane asking Sato about his preferences. She first asks about his type of girl, and when Sato responds that he doesn't really have a specific type, Akane humorously suggests that any girl would do, to which Sato quickly clarifies. Akane then asks about his favorite food. Sato lists steak, sushi, and seafood bowls with salmon roll, which Akane describes as extravagant. He explains that his grandfather always takes him to such places. Curious, Akane asks how he likes his steak. Sato replies that he prefers it rare, and Akane jokingly notes it down as raw and bloody. Sato corrects her, saying it's not that rare. Akane then asks if there are any specific toppings he likes. Sato mentions sautéed garlic, not the fried kind. Akane teases him by writing down raw garlic, which causes Sato to exasperatedly ask why she's so fixated on raw food. The following day at school, Akane shares with Himari that she's learned Sato's favorite food is raw meat, which surprises Himari. She's taken aback, saying, "Raw meat? That's a surprising choice." Akane then adds that he also likes raw garlic, which only adds to the unexpectedness. Himari, who initially thought of Sato as the intellectual type, is intrigued and admits, "That's awesome. I didn't expect that side of him." Akane asks, somewhat curious, why Himari seems so happy despite it not being what she expected. Himari explains that getting to know a different side of Sato makes her feel closer to him, which she finds enjoyable. Akane continues by sharing more about Sato's habits, mentioning that he enjoys reading and playing video games, and that he usually reads a book before bed. Himari, eager to know how Akane knows so much about him, asks her how she learned these details. Akane quickly responds, claiming, "I overheard him talking to Shishi." Himari, curious to know more, asks about the types of games Sato likes to play. Akane grimaces, saying Sato is into horror games, especially ones with zombies and ghosts, which she finds bloody and disgusting. She mentions that the sound from his games always leaks out of his headphones. Himari, surprised by the specifics, asks why Akane knows so much about Sato's gaming habits. Akane defensively explains that she simply has no patience for that kind of game and prefers games that are more educational or cute. Finally, Himari thanks Akane for all the new information, saying, "Thanks, I learned a lot." At home, Akane asks Sato to clean the bathtub while she prepares dinner. When Sato hears it's fish, he jokingly wonders when steak will be on the menu, referencing a previous conversation about how he likes his steak cooked. Akane, a bit surprised, realizes Sato was actually looking forward to the steak, which softens her perspective on him. She decides to keep her word and promise, though Sato seems puzzled by her comment. Later, as they walk together, Akane expresses how comforting and nostalgic it feels to look forward to dinner, reminiscent of her childhood when she eagerly awaited her mom's cooking. Sato, who doesn't have similar memories, responds vaguely, prompting Akane to push for a clearer answer. When Sato playfully asks if she's interested in him, Akane quickly denies it. Later, Akane surprises Sato by preparing steak, declaring it as nothing special for an amazing cook like herself. When Sato tastes it, he is blown away, exclaiming how good it is. Akane, suspicious of his enthusiasm, wonders if he's setting a trap, but Sato reassures her, genuinely complimenting her cooking and wishing she would make it every day. Akane teases him, jokingly suggesting it sounds like a proposal, to which Sato quickly denies, pointing out that they're already married. Akane, proud of his praise, offers to cook as much of her amazing food as he wants. However, when she gets a little too close while speaking, Sato comments on it, and Akane admits she just thought he couldn't hear her. The next day at school, Himari curiously asks Sato about his ideal type of girl, revealing she heard he doesn't have a specific preference. Sato, unsure about the whole idea of having a type, explains that labeling people with types limits how well you can truly know them. He believes you can only fall for someone after genuinely getting to know them. Himari appreciates his thoughtful perspective, but adds that many people who ask her out don't understand her at all, joking that they probably only like her for her appearance. Sato, blunt as ever, remarks that pretty girls must have it tough, which flusters Himari. She jokingly protests, and Sato assures her he didn't mean anything by it. When asked if he thinks she's pretty, Sato dodges, but Himari playfully refuses to admit it, fearing she'd sound like a narcissist. Akane joins him with a sarcastic remark, and Sato jokes about calling himself a genius, causing Himari to blush and change the subject. Later, Himari teasingly asks if Sato could like someone like her after getting to know her better, making Sato fluster and awkwardly questioning her intentions. But she quickly brushes it off, leaving him confused. Just then, Shishi enters, teasing Sato about being in heat and claiming to smell a male in a rut. Sato firmly rejects her suggestion, but Shishi jokingly declares she will live between his legs forever, prompting Sato to clarify that such a place is definitely not suitable for humans. At home, Akane sneaks into Sato's room and stumbles upon a confidential notebook. Before she can peek inside, Sato walks in, causing her to panic and scream. Sato, unfazed, reassures her that there's no need for such a reaction. Akane insists she's innocent, claiming she's not a spy, but Sato teases her, questioning what she meant by that. Akane playfully accuses him of purposely leaving the notebook where she'd find it, knowing she'd sneak a look. Sato downplays it, explaining that it's just something not worth showing others. Trying to change the subject, Akane asks for some book recommendations, revealing her interest in his collection. Sato suggests a book on human history through the lens of food and weapons, which he finds hilarious, handing it over to her. Akane is taken aback by its weight, skeptical about the book's entertainment value. Sato, however, insists it's funny, full of absurdities about human history, though Akane teasingly calls him condescending for recommending it. The next day, Himari is talking with Akane about the book Sato recommended. She confesses that she didn't understand much of it and had to ask Sato for clarification. While they're chatting, Akane stands by the door, feeling a bit out of place. Shishi, noticing Akane's discomfort, approaches and asks if it bothers her that Himari seems to be getting along so well with Sato. Akane denies it, explaining that it's just strange seeing Himari act so friendly with him, since it's a side of her Akane hasn't seen before. Shishi points out that Himari has had a crush on Sato since freshman year, surprising Akane. She brushes it off, insisting Himari deserves someone better than Sato. Shishi playfully teases her, asking if she doesn't want them to look good together, but Akane dismisses it, saying it's not that. When Himari returns, she thanks Akane for letting her chat with Sato and suggests they hang out at Akane's place while getting strawberry tarts. Akane hesitates, mentioning that her place is in complete chaos at the moment, and jokingly exaggerates that it's so messy they're using cracked barrels as boats. Himari laughs but presses her, wondering if she's lying or just doesn't want her over. Akane apologizes, saying it's not that she doesn't want her there, it's just a mess. She reassures Himari that she loves hanging out with her and would never mind her visiting. Later, Akane informs Sato at home that Himari is coming over, which surprises him. She admits she couldn't bring herself to turn Himari down. Akane, feeling nervous about the visit, decides to hide Sato's belongings and asks him to hide in his study room, warning him to stay quiet. However, things take an awkward turn when Himari arrives early. Both Akane and Sato are caught off guard, leading to a chaotic scene where Sato frantically tries to hide his things. Sato notices Himari getting closer and quickly hides in a corner. Himari, ever observant, comments on hearing a sound from the kitchen, which Akane brushes off as nothing. Himari insists it's a phone notification, prompting Akane to suggest it might be hers. The conversation takes a turn when Himari asks Akane if she likes Sato. Akane firmly denies it, assuring Himari that she doesn't have any feelings for him. Akane then makes some offhand comments about Sato, which he overhears, leaving him feeling hurt. The following day at school, Himari approaches Sato, asking him if he'd like to go on a date with her. Sato gently rejects her, explaining that he doesn't feel that way about her. Himari, visibly upset, takes it in stride and says she understands, but Sato appreciates her directness. Akane overhears their conversation and, when questioned by Shishi, reveals that she has no intention of stopping Sato from rejecting Himari, as she believes it's not her place to intervene. Shishi interrupts the conversation, sensing Akane hasn't fully realized her own feelings. Akane tries to avoid opening up, but eventually admits she wants what's best for Himari and would do anything for her, even if it means making sacrifices. Later that evening, Sato reveals that Himari asked him out, and Akane sarcastically remarks that it's a good thing someone as beautiful as Himari is interested in him. When Sato asks if he should go on the date, Akane snaps, "Why are you asking me? You can do whatever you want." Her frustration is evident as she tells him she doesn't care. The following day, as Sato prepares to go on the date, Akane questions him, asking if he's really going. When Sato offers to stay if she asks him to, she tells him to go and enjoy himself. However, just before he leaves, she unexpectedly stops him, confessing that she doesn't want him going out with anyone else. She admits that while she doesn't like it, she can't stand the thought of him with another girl. Sato reassures her that he already turned down the date, knowing that she doesn't hate him. This only makes Akane angrier, feeling conflicted about her emotions. In a twist, Sato suggests they go shopping together, intending to give her a ring as a gift. Akane, surprised and flustered by the gesture, starts blushing, further complicating her feelings. The next day at school, Himari approaches Sato, greeting him cheerfully despite his earlier rejection. Sato is surprised by her persistence, but Himari confidently declares, "It doesn't change how I feel. I'll eventually win you over." She also mentions how she used to be ignored by Akane, but eventually became her best friend. Meanwhile, Akane, spying from behind the door, thinks to herself, "I won't let you in," but then pauses, wondering, "Wait, what am I saying?" The scene shifts to Himari offering Saito Hojo some raw meat and garlic she whipped up for lunch. Apparently, she heard through the grapevine that Saito has a taste for such delicacies. It doesn't take Saito long to figure out Akane is the mastermind behind this culinary experiment. Nonetheless, thanks to peer pressure and a misplaced sense of adventure, he takes a bite. And surprise, it's not half bad. Akane, witnessing this strange feeding ritual, feels the green-eyed monster rise. But Himari, ever the oblivious one, thinks Akane's just upset she didn't get a taste. So naturally, she shovels a forkful of raw meat and garlic Akane's way. Meanwhile, Shisei seizes the chance to gobble up the lunch Saito and Akane actually brought for themselves. Opportunistic snacker, that one. Next, Himari ropes Saito into a study session at her house, claiming she's falling behind in class. Akane, ever the overprotective guardian, overhears this and chimes in, warning Himari about the dangers of being alone with Saito. But Himari, armed with the power of naivety and a burgeoning crush, doesn't mind at all. Determined to make it a group effort, Himari convinces Akane to join their study session. She figures that with the top 2 students at her beck and call, third place in the class rankings is practically hers. The plan grows when Shisei, the study prodigy, arrives, and they all end up at Akane's place for a mega study marathon. Once there, Saito realizes Himari is so behind, she might as well be studying ancient scrolls. They start from the 10th grade material, and Himari is dazzled, thinking Saito is some sort of genius incarnate, flattery in its purest, most desperate form. Shisei, bored out of her mind, suggests a break to play a memory game. Predictably, Saito mops the floor with them. You'd think the guy had a photographic memory or something, which, funnily enough, he does. Each member of the Hojo family has a freakish superpower, and his just happens to be memorizing everything, from calculus formulas to Akane's favorite strawberry cake. Creepy or convenient? Depends on who you ask. After Saito's victorious game run, he steps out for errands, and Akane follows, marveling at his eerie memorization skills. She doesn't mind though. Honestly, she'd probably trade her soul for that kind of brain power, just to avoid cramming for exams. Returning from errands, they find Shisei and Himari enthusiastically shooting zombies in a video game. Himari is shocked that Akane owns something so violent, but Akane insists it's her dad's. A tea break turns chaotic when Himari spills tea on herself, and Saito instinctively grabs a towel. Akane finds this a bit too convenient, suspiciously asking how he knew where the towels were. Saito attributes it to instinct, earning yet another declaration of genius status from Himari. A power cut suddenly plunges the room into darkness, scaring Akane into clinging to Saito like a koala. The lights flick back on just in time for Himari to spot their closeness, which she interprets as budding friendship. Akane, however, vehemently denies any such notion. Back at school the next day, Himari asks Saito for another study session, this time at his place. Akane, not to be outdone in the jealousy department, insists Saito helps her study at home too. Saito, as it turns out, has a trick book that's only simple if you're secretly a genius, like Akane, apparently. After a productive study session, Saito digs into Akane's motivations, specifically why she wants to become a doctor. It turns out Akane had a sickly sister whom she could only comfort by patting her head before her sister eventually passed away. Feeling down, Saito seeks Shisei's advice, leading him to ask Akane out on what is, for all intents and purposes, a date. Akane's grandma, thrilled by this development, outfits her in a stunning dress for their outing. Karaoke ensues, with off-key singing and sugary drinks aplenty. During the date, Akane learns Saito planned the whole thing just to cheer her up. Sneaky but effective. Their day winds down at a pharmacy, where Saito enthusiastically samples different vitamins. On their way back, Akane's attention is captured by a beautiful ring. She makes a mental note to buy it someday when her wallet isn't in critical condition. She then has a flashback from her childhood, where her mother taught her that a ring symbolizes love. The next day, Akane and Saito bickering like an old married couple on a fine morning. Akane, having poured her heart and soul into making fried eggs, gets absolutely fuming when Saito chooses to watch TV instead of admiring her culinary masterpiece. After their usual chaotic morning routine, Saito suddenly remembers the ring Akane had been obsessing over the other day. Later at school, Saito casually asks Shisei if he can come over after school. He claims he just wants to hang out. But Shisei, knowing him too well, doesn't question it. Since her house might as well be Saito's second home, she doesn't mind. She calls her personal maid, Rui, who casually arranges a luxurious ride to take them to her villa, because why not travel in style? Since Saito doesn't visit as much anymore, Shisei is determined to make the most of it. She suggests a variety of games, including playing dead and vampire-themed shenanigans, because that's totally normal. Just then, Shisei's mother, Saito's aunt, makes an entrance. She asks Saito if he'd like to stay for dinner, but he declines, saying Akane will be making dinner for him. However, he then asks if she has any work for him. His aunt assumes it's about money and tells him he can always just ask his grandfather. But Saito, being the stubborn protagonist he is, insists on earning his own cash. When she asks what he needs the money for, he vaguely says it's for a present. This revelation stings Shisei, who thought Saito came over to hang out with her, not just to discuss finances. Feeling left out, she pouts while Saito awkwardly tries to cheer her up. Meanwhile, Saito's aunt reminds him of his noble Hojo status and takes a moment to diss his marriage. She's against it, but she does offer him a job, helping out with her company's localization team by learning a whole foreign language overnight. Naturally, Saito says, sure, why not? Because apparently, he's a human version of Google Translate. Cut to the next night at home. Saito is somehow learning an entire language in a single evening. Akane, noticing this sudden burst of linguistic ambition, asks him why. He shuts her down with a vague, "It doesn't concern you," which, unsurprisingly, does not put her at ease. From that day on, Saito starts coming home late. Akane, despite pretending she doesn't care, is obviously worried. Meanwhile, at Shisei's place, she's comfortably sitting on Saito's lap while he works, lamenting how lonely she's been ever since his marriage to Akane. She understands that he's doing this for his dreams, but she still misses their carefree days. Saito, in classic dense protagonist fashion, doesn't pick up on how much this means to her. At night, when Saito finally gets home, Akane notices something strange. He smells like perfume. The next day at school, she smells the same scent on Shisei. Cue immediate suspicion. Her tsundere brain goes into overdrive, wondering if Saito is cheating on her. Panicking, she runs to her grandmother, who listens patiently and then drops the ultimate wisdom bomb. Yeah, I was just as bad at expressing my feelings when I was your age. The next day, Akane's paranoia spikes when she sees Saito and Shisei together again. Since Saito refuses to tell her anything, she takes matters into her own hands and calls Shisei's house at night. Rui picks up the phone, and when Akane asks if Saito is there, she casually says yes, as if this isn't an episode of a high-stakes teen drama. Before Akane can talk to Saito, though, Shisei's mother takes over and, in classic evil stepmother style, rudely reminds Akane that her marriage to Saito is fake and just a mere formality. She basically tells Akane that whatever Saito does isn't her concern. Ouch. Meanwhile, Saito finally finishes his translation work and secures his paycheck. On his way home, he stops by a jewelry store to buy the ring Akane wanted. When he gets back, Akane, still steaming with 100 different suspicions, bombards him with questions. But before she can launch into a full interrogation, Saito simply hands her the ring. And just like that, all her anger and doubt melt away. She is absolutely floored, treating the ring like the most precious treasure in existence. She's so touched that she even makes extra steak for Saito, which is her version of true love. The next day at school, Akane proudly wears the ring. Saito, noticing this, reminds her that while it's great she loves it, it might cause unnecessary trouble if people find out. Reluctantly, she agrees to keep it in her bag. However, later that night, she realizes something terrible. She's lost the ring. Devastated, she retraces her steps, searching the streets in vain. But no matter how hard she looks, it's gone. She refuses to tell Saito, knowing it would break his heart. Shisei, noticing Akane's unusual distress, asks what's wrong. When she finds out about the lost ring, she joins the search effort. Unfortunately, even Shisei, with all her resources, can't find it. She advises Akane to tell Saito the truth, but Akane would rather wrestle a bear than confess something so embarrassing. That night, Shisei visits Saito's place looking for Akane. Saito, already worried about her being out so late, asks Shisei if she knows anything. But Shisei, prideful as ever, doesn't say a word. Eventually, Saito finds Akane, who completely breaks down in front of him. But instead of getting mad, Saito simply tells her it's fine. He'll help her find the ring. Using his photographic memory like some detective straight out of a mystery novel, he retraces Akane's steps and miraculously finds the ring. Overwhelmed with emotion, Akane vows never to lose it again. Just when things seem to be settling down, the episode drops a final twist. A mysterious pink-haired girl appears, someone who knows all about Saito's marriage and is plotting to steal everything from him, because clearly, Saito's life wasn't dramatic enough already. A young girl with long pink hair approached Saito, calling him senpai and telling him that she was Maho, but he claimed that he didn't know her and asked her what she wanted from him. That astonished her, but she quickly said that it was fine before adding that thanks to that, she was very into him. In fact, almost immediately she asked him to be her boyfriend, which shocked him. As for her, she didn't like his reaction and told him that he didn't need to be surprised before adding that he was hurting her. To which he quickly replied that his reaction was normal since a stranger had suddenly asked him that. Nevertheless, she didn't back down and said that she knew much about him, which surprised him. She then told him that she knew that Himari had confessed to him, but he had turned her down. She even joked that he was a picky eater for having done that. However, before he could say anything, she said that she knew why he had done that before revealing that he was living with Akane. That really shocked him, and he immediately asked her, with a stern expression, how she knew that. Still, she kept her cheerful demeanor and replied that she knew all about her beloved senpai, but he didn't buy it and told her that she needed to stop playing dumb since that was not even an explanation. Sadly, she simply replied that she didn't intend to elaborate either. That pissed him off more, and he asked her who she was. In fact, he almost yelled while doing it. Nevertheless, she remained looking amused and asked him if he would go out with her, which left him flabbergasted. Saito then asked her how their conversation had led to their dating, but she simply reminded him that she knew a dangerous secret about Akane before adding that she couldn't guarantee what she would do if he didn't comply with her request. Obviously, he couldn't believe that she was trying to blackmail him, but she quickly began to yell to everyone that he and Akane were living together, which forced him to cover her mouth with her hands. Right after, she grabbed him by the collar and, after saying that he surely was bold, asked him if he wanted a taste of her lips. Luckily, before he could kiss him, she received a strong flying kick courtesy of Shisei, who then told Saito that she would protect him from any enemies, no matter how strong they were. Nevertheless, instead of getting angry, she just praised Shisei for being cute and even said she wanted to kidnap Saito's cousin. In the end, they both were saved by the bell, even though Shisei found the whole thing very suspicious. Shortly after, Maho went looking for Saito in his classroom, which pissed all his male classmates because another girl had fallen for him. That forced him to leave, and she followed him, trying to convince him that she loved him to no avail. Still, she managed to convince him to go out, and they both ended up eating hamburgers. There, he was surprised by how much she could eat and how much she loved junk food. They even ended up discovering that they had some things in common, like their love for junk food and how they had people that bickered at them for eating that. Unfortunately for him, she tricked him and took a picture of her licking one of his fingers, which startled him. Still, after some chasing, he managed to convince her to delete it and invited her to go shopping, which surprised Maho. However, that decision backfired him because she ended up forcing him to take her to his place. And when Akane welcomed them, he finally discovered that Maho was his wife's little sister. He had misunderstood she was dead, but in reality, she had just gone on a trip abroad. She then said that she wanted to investigate their married life, which surprised Akane. Still, the one who ended up going berserk was Maho when she found out that Saito and Akane were sleeping together, since she thought that Akane had already given her first time to him. Eventually, they managed to let her know that nothing had happened, and she decided to stay over for the night and observe their nightlife. Afterward, when Akane was preparing dinner, they found Shisei inside the refrigerator, and shortly after, Shisei challenged Maho to a competition to see who deserved Saito's little sister's spot the most, and Akane's sister suffered a crushing defeat. Later that night, in private, Maho offered Akane to convince their grandmother to let her marry Saito instead, freeing Akane from the responsibility. After all, Maho could also fulfill their grandmother and Saito's grandfather's goal. In fact, Maho tried to convince Akane that they were just made for each other since they had the same hobbies. Maho went as far as to use the picture she had supposedly deleted in order to manipulate Akane into thinking that Saito had already started to get along with Maho. This young girl is evil. Eventually, she managed to make Akane begin to seriously consider that possibility in good light. But when Maho left to bond with Saito, Akane began to realize that, in truth, that idea made her feel uncomfortable for reasons she couldn't understand. Immediately thereafter, Maho ambushed Saito in the bath. Where is Shisei when he needs her? and made him the same offer of marriage. She even told him that she would let him do anything he wanted to her while touching his back with her naked chest to reaffirm her offer. That really made him feel embarrassed, but she didn't back down and reminded him that Akane would never take a bath with him, nor accept his wishes and desires as they were. Exhausted by her behavior, Saito went to bed, where Akane told him that seeing her little sister so cheerful made her happy, because Maho had always been bedridden since she was a child. Then, she asked him if he was thinking of breaking up with her. That question surprised him, and instead of answering, he asked her if she would agree in case he was willing to do it. After hearing that, Akane began to hesitate without giving him a clear answer, and at that moment, Saito realized that he didn't even know what he wanted himself.